Well, we got some good news and we got some really, really, really bad news. The good news is that Trump won, and it seems like America is leading the path, paving the way for ending wokeism, ending the radical left's agenda, and taking back control, just masculinity, femininity, men in men's sports, women in women's sports, and the world is going back to a bit of a normal. The really bad news is that we might not have a world to go back to if things keep heading in this direction. Of course, I'm referring to the escalating tensions with Russia and how America, so in the past, right, there was a long discussion, and independent NATO countries were basically, some of them were coming out and saying, including Justin Trudeau, and I freaking hate to admit it, but Justin Trudeau unfortunately said, yes, we agree that Ukraine should have the ability to use America-made and manufactured long-range ballistic missiles that could hit the inside, the interior, the heart, potentially, of Russia. And Putin then came out and said, if you do that, I will nuke you all. I mean, he sounds a lot more badass than that. And so that just raised questions as to, is this really a good idea? And as somebody who's completely against the war between Ukraine and Russia and just like overall how we've been funding it, I personally, who doesn't have a political voice but has a YouTube channel, have been saying for a very long time, no, do not use those long-range ballistic missiles. And then Biden previously said that he supported it until yesterday or the day prior, where he actually gave authorization for Ukraine to use those. And in response, Russia has already launched a pretty big bombardment of missiles on Ukraine, and they've reiterated their point that saying if you use those long-range ballistic missiles, holy smokes, dyslexic much, ballistic missiles, then we will have no choice but to retaliate with appropriate force, and then we'll be Russia, not we, but we in this context, will be at war with all of NATO, which is not something that anybody wants. No. And the only ones that are pushing to stop the wars, plural, around the world is Trump. No more wars. Let's make the world great again. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does tremendously help grow the channel. And if you want a matchy match sticker like this one right here, keep calm and never vote liberal, you can find the link for this down below in the description or the pinned comment below, and you will be met with a sticker pack like this. Only scams by the liberals. Freeland on a broom. Trudeau must go. That one is pretty awesome. Keep calm and never vote liberal. And stop the WEF Klaus Schwab crying on a tractor. And if you use code SUNSHINE at checkout, you'll get yourself 15% off. So we're going to be taking a look at the war stuff. Obviously, it'd be kind of weird if I started with the intro and didn't include it in the video. That'll be later on, like just in a few minutes. We're going to start off with some more Canadian stuff just to kick things off, such as an update with the Canada Post strike, because this is a Canadian channel. And without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the polls. So Pierre Poilievre has gone down in the last update from 218, 216 projected seats maybe. Now he's at 214. And then you got Justin Trudeau, who's somehow gone up to 66, odd number for him. Bloc is at 44 and the NDP is at 17. And then you got 90% likely across the board for the Conservatives of not only winning the most seats, but odds of a majority government. So, I mean, even though there's a little bit of, ups and downs, volatility, it still seems like Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party are sitting very, very good with the projected polls. And now let's get into what's going on with the Canada Post strike, because it's official. Like, they've been talking about going on strike. They've kind of, frozen a few things, but now it's like actually a strike. And I just feel like we're being blue-balled here by the postal office. And yeah, let's take a look here at the special mediator who's doing negotiations.
Labor lawyer and partner at Macmillan LLP. No relation, I should add. Good morning. Good to see you today. So talk to us about the role of this special mediator leading the negotiations. What does that mean?
So Peter Simpson is the Director General right now, the head of all of Mediation and Conciliation Services for the federal Minister of Labor. He's got a lot of experience well-respected individual. He's actually used to be himself a union president, a union negotiator on behalf of faculty associations. Then he was in an assistant deputy minister in the Ontario government before moving up to where he is now. If there's anybody who can get a deal between these parties, it'll be him. Unfortunately, though, he is only a conciliator. As a mediator, he can only try and bring them to agreement. He can't force them to agree to anything.
With the two sides so very far apart, it seems, how long do you think it will be before an agreement could be reached? I mean, where do you even begin?
That's a great question. I mean, and when they were on strike in 2018, it continued on for 5 weeks before the government intervened and ordered them back to work, and actually in late November of 2018. Here we have a strike that started right around the same time, and the parties really are so far apart. We have a union that is seeking 22% over 4 years, which is far above inflation in terms of wage increases. They want to see greater improvements in which is already a fairly generous benefit plan. They want to see more job security, which means less use of part-time employees. And they want to see Canada Post stop taking measures that they have been taking to try and make their operations more efficient, because it makes for tougher work and longer work hours for some shifts. On the other side, you have Canada Post, whose entire offer has been, here's 11.5% over 4 years, which is about a little over inflation. But pretty much that's it. Everything else, we're not going to touch anything. We're not going to ask you for any concessions. And oh, by the way, for all the new people that we're going to hire, we want to offer them either lesser hours, lesser job security, and we want to eliminate mandatory double time or overtime payments on Saturday and Sunday work. So there's a very, very vast gap between the two parties.
Yeah, Canada Post says they're not in a position to pay workers anymore. Is the union out of touch? Canada Post has said many times the struggles that they are facing in the current environment.
Well, I think, frankly, that Canada, the union itself, is arguing from a historically position where they feel that they've been strong. They feel that they've been able to push the envelope on a lot of things. And I think we're now getting to a time and an economic point where they've pushed a little too hard and too far. And they have to face the fact that they're not going to have as much control over shift assignments or duty assignments, that they're going to have to accept that in order to stay relevant and competitive in the 21st century, people are going to have to work on the weekends, and it's not going to automatically incur double time. Like, those are some serious expenses that really you just don't see anywhere else in the logistics market.
All right.
I think that unfortunately, because of like just really poor management and ability to properly run a business, especially at that scale, especially like Canada Post is, I mean, say of it what you will, it's a Canada postage office. Like, I think it's phenomenal that Canada has like a Canadian postal service, but unfortunately, it's just not managed properly. And that's not saying that I could do better. I'm just here criticizing how the money's been spent, how they've been running in billion-dollar deficits, and it hasn't been good. And unfortunately, on top of all that, it's affecting so many Canadians' lives and livelihoods, not just because of, you know, the interruptions and disruptions from the actual strike, how that's affecting, you know, consumers and small businesses, but the people that are on strike that are either not getting paid or getting very little percentage of their pay from participating in the strike, and how potentially if Canada Post goes under, you're talking like thousands, tens of thousands of jobs just poof gone. And I don't think that's good. I think that Canadians need more jobs, and I really hope that one day maybe it's Canada Post, maybe it's a competitor, but it'll be properly managed, so we just don't face not only these interruptions, but this type of disruption to like people's jobs and livelihoods in this country. That's my own personal opinion. I'd absolutely love to know yours. And then next up, we got to take a look here at Canada and our NATO contribution, specifically towards the defense spending targets, because it's raising a lot of concerns. Let's take a look.
The incoming Trump administration is also putting Canada's defense spending back in the spotlight. Trump has previously threatened to pull protection from NATO allies who don't hit the mark. CTV's Colton Prail reports.
Understaffed, under-equipped, and underprepared. The criticisms of Canada's military are long-standing, but there are new warnings about their consequences.
We are laggard. We are irrelevant. If we expect to get any attention in Washington at all on anything, we've got to do major work on our defense capabilities.
Canada is one of the only NATO members without a costed plan to hit NATO's 2% of GDP spending targets. What was a nuisance for previous American administrations could be much more consequential under a Trump White House that looks to tie defense budgets to tariffs and free trade agreements.
This will be America's new golden age.
His approach is entirely transactional, and he's perfectly happy to link what we need to what he demands.
This month, the former top soldier told a parliamentary committee Canada's military readiness was at its lowest point in 50 years, warning Canada is falling behind its NATO peers, spending just above 1.3% of GDP on defense this year, climbing to 1.76% in 2030.
Our friends and allies are tired of waiting for us. And we're now putting our nation at risk, not only in terms of defense, but also trade and credibility at a time when these predators are on the prowl.
According to the parliamentary budget officer, meeting the NATO target would mean doubling military spending over the next 8 years. Experts say unless Canada acts quickly, the country risks becoming increasingly marginalized as hard power and military might become greater factors in international relations. Heather.
Colton, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, even NATO made a video, or not a video for crying out loud. I'm making a video. Even NATO made a statement not too long ago, suggested that Canada needs to prepare for conventional warfare, which means that, hey, shit's going to hit the fan, not only in other places around the world, but we could very well be either called up with a draft or something could happen here. Keep in mind that we're not too far away from Russia, especially in the wintertime. You can actually walk there. I wouldn't advise it, but I think it's possible. And you just got to make a couple hops on different little floating pieces of ice. But hey, nonetheless, we are screwed if we continue down this path. And saying we're going to hit 2% of our GDP for our defense budget contribution in 8 years? No. That should have been done a long time ago. In fact, 10 years ago, Germany, if I'm not mistaken, and Canada both said to NATO, because we both have been failing to hit our targets, hey, in 10 years from now, in 2014, which would bring us to right now, 2024, both Canada and Germany agreed that we will be both hitting the 2% minimum contribution. And Germany this year finally succeeded. Canada is still trailing behind. In fact, we are the worst contributors, which, wait a second. If I do some math, carry the 1, divide by 2, multiply by 7, we're also the most progressive country in the entire freaking world. Does that have anything to do with it? I don't know. Call a spade a spade. But again, that's my own personal opinion. I would absolutely love to know yours. And there's reasons to believe that we could actually get kicked out of NATO. And then there's also a lot of people saying that's not the worst thing. So yikes. I don't know. I don't know what to think of that, but it's not good. And then Justin Trudeau is expected to champion support for Ukraine at the G20 summit, where he's going to be saying Slava Ukraini many times over and over again, probably.
The green light to use long-range missiles will bolster Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's plan for victory over Russia. It's a plan Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to champion at the G20 summit in Brazil. CTV's Judy Trinh is traveling with the Prime Minister. Judy, how much support is there for Ukraine's plan?
Heather, there is support here amongst the strongest democracies, the group of 7 that make up the G20. But there is concern that commitment is waning amongst other countries as the war drags on and the new administration of Donald Trump is ushered in. With his daughter at his side, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau arrived in Rio de Janeiro, prepared to take on a pivotal role in rallying other G20 nations to continue their support of Ukraine's war on Russia. He will lobby military allies who are at this summit to extend Ukraine full membership in NATO and to support President Vladimir Zelensky's plan to win the war, which includes a return of the territory Russia has taken over after it invaded Russia nearly 3 years ago.
The fact that Russia has chosen to redraw those lines on the map is the thing that worries people the most around the world. And that's why it is so important that Ukraine wins this conflict, that Russia loses this conflict.
Host country Brazil, backed by China.
See, that's like such a weird way of putting it. How about we just end the conflict? Why does there have to be a winner and a loser? Like, this isn't a sports game. This is real life and real people. And I think that the resolution is to end the conflict. What a freaking weird way of trying to get your message across. Like, what the hell's wrong with this freaking prime minister?
China is expected to float a different ceasefire plan, lobbying for G20 members to push Kyiv and Moscow into peace negotiations that will result in Russia keeping territory it has annexed. And of course, looming over all of this is uncertainty over what Donald Trump will do after his January inauguration. Trump has previously said that he would withdraw military support from Ukraine to force it to negotiate with Russia. Heather.
Judy Chen reporting from Brazil.
Yeah, I think that there's something seriously wrong with Justin Trudeau. I don't think that the world is really behind. There has to be a winner and a loser. I think everybody is like unanimously, well, everyone with common sense, rather, is unanimously agreeing that this conflict just needs to end. And in fact, the only one that actually brought forward a solution was Trump. When he immediately won the election, was in touch with Putin, and they both agreed, okay, the war will end. There will be no winners. There will be no losers. In fact, everyone that's kind of been involved with this war is indeed, or has lost something, money, people, whatever it is. And the solution was Ukraine will not bid on being a part of NATO for the next 20 years, and Russia and Ukraine will go back to, coexisting in peace for that duration. And that's something that's phenomenal, and that hasn't been presented under the Biden administration. Even Justin Trudeau doesn't present ideas like that. So I just feel like it's such a delicate state of the world until President Trump is actually sworn in. We're all just looking at our calendars going, is it today? Is it today? Is it today? But I think it'll happen sooner than later. And then we need to take a look more in depth here at what is actually going on with President Sleepy Joe Biden, who gave the go-ahead for Ukraine to strike interior Russia with those long-range missiles.
So President Biden reversing course and lifting restrictions on Ukraine's use of U.S.-provided weapons deep inside Russian territory. For the first time, Biden is giving Ukrainian forces the green light to actually strike Russia with long-range American missiles. That move coming after months of lobbying by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and with major changes on the horizon once President-elect Trump takes office. Our Patrick Reevell is in Ukraine. So, Patrick, let's talk about how big of an impact this could make on the war.
Hi, Kira. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's certainly a significant decision by President Biden to essentially reverse his opposition to over a year of Ukrainian requests to use these long-range ATACMS missiles. But there is a caveat. We know from our reporting that for the time being, at least, the focus of this authority to start striking inside Russia is limited to the Kursk region, which is the border region, the Russian border region that Ukraine managed to take a foothold in with its own offensive back in August, and where now Russia has been trying to push Ukraine out of with a major new offensive, including with thousands of North Korean troops. And it's our understanding that the arrival of the North Korean troops was a significant factor, perhaps the crucial factor, in persuading the Biden administration to finally drop its opposition to allowing Ukraine to use these missiles. And as we understand it from most military experts, they believe, of course, it will be useful to Ukraine, it will be helpful to them in holding on to Kursk, but it will ultimately still be limited. And what we hear from Ukrainian officials is that it is still short of what Ukraine had been hoping. We understand that there are hundreds of potential targets across the border in other areas of Russia that they would like to be able to hit, but which they, at the moment, it seems unlikely they would be able to. The question, of course, is what is Russia going to do? There was concern, obviously, among the Biden administration that there would be some kind of retaliation over this. This is why they didn't want to do this in the first place. But what that type of retaliation will be, we don't yet know. Most experts think it will likely be more some kind of asymmetric response. Today we've heard from the Kremlin saying that this decision pours fuel on the fire of the conflict, and that it's another spiral of escalation. We've also heard a senior Russian official say that they will be forced to respond. Ukraine previously has said that ultimately Russia is largely bluffing, and they believe that the US and the Biden administration has been too timid throughout this war. But I guess we will see how this goes, Kira.
All right, Patrick Reevell. Thank you. Someone else who's watching how it's going to go is someone who knows the region extremely well. Let's take it to former U.S. Ambassador of Ukraine, Bill Taylor now. Bill, good to see you. Let's talk about why would the Biden administration make this move now? And what does it mean for Ukraine's military capabilities?
Well, Kira, it clearly increases Ukraine's military capabilities, and now's a good time to do it. They should have done it earlier, as you've reported, but the arrival now on the battlefield of North Korean troops is another indication of the seriousness of this issue. And the Biden administration has decided to counter that. The United States is countering this move by the Russians to bring in the North Koreans. And this does give the Ukrainians the ability to fire deep into Russia to disrupt these moves by the Russians and the North Koreans.
So do you think we could soon see other allies giving similar permission to use long-range missiles?
Yeah,
I do.
Very likely.
The French and the British have held off on giving the Ukrainians the permission to use their Scalp and their Storm Shadows, which are the equivalents of our ATACMS. And now that the Biden administration has given the green light, I would surely expect the French and the British to give the green light. And I think there's a decent chance, Kira, that the Germans will decide to provide their even longer range missiles. They call them the Taurus. And those missiles, the Taurus, the Germans have even longer range than the ATACMS. So this could be a significant increase in the Ukrainian capabilities.
Not to mention, too, that a lot of these long-range ballistic missiles, they can actually have interchangeable warheads on the front. So I think that one of the big concerns is that the ones that Ukraine was approved to use, they can actually get a nuclear warhead put on. Now, will that happen? I don't know. I didn't think that it would actually get approved. So who's to say what the hell is going to happen in the future, not to mention near future, but this just is not a step in the right direction. We're going backwards. This is horrible way to, end a war. Like, you're talking about potentially triggering the end of the world or an entire civilization or an entire country. I mean, it's not good. I don't think anyone thinks this is good other than the left radical leaning warmongers.
So if all these other allied countries get involved and we see more long-range missiles, and then you've got President-elect Trump saying, he's going to end this war as soon as he takes office, do you see something finally happening here? Do you see an end in sight to this invasion in Ukraine?
Well, the end will come when the Ukrainians have demonstrated to the Russians with these missiles and other actions that the Russians can't win. This is an indication that the United States continues to back Ukraine, and we will see shortly, as you've just described, the Europeans saying the same thing. The Ukrainians have given every indication they're going to continue to fight. When the Russians understand they cannot win, then that will bring an end to this war.
Well, the Kremlin says that this move definitely raises the temperature in the region. Are they right, or are they going down?
So the Kremlin has said every time there's a big decision that the United States or others, NATO allies, have had to make in terms of what kinds of facilities, what kinds of weapons, what kinds of ammunition, what kinds of authorities, what kind of permissions, every time there's been a big decision, the Russians have said, you better not do it, or else we're going to be doing something. And they've never done it. So the Ukrainians recognize that. The Biden administration apparently has recognized that, and they're taking these decisions now in spite of this latest version of these threats from the Russians.
Taking advantage of the moment. Former ambassador to Ukraine, Bill.
Yeah, I think that this needs to be very delicately approached, and everyone that it has common sense is kind of thinking the same thing. Not to say that it's my idea or people are agreeing with me, but I think just collectively, everyone's like, hey, whoa, let's freaking simmer down here. What do you mean you're going to be launching into the heart of Russia and then declaring war with all of NATO? Bro, Ukraine's not even a part of NATO. And if they actually shoot those missiles, Russia then says, we're at war with all of NATO. That's not something that I, myself, who is non-consensually a part of NATO, am voting for or support. It's craziness. And let's take a look here at one final interview about this, because people are saying that Putin is actually considering nuclear war before Christmas in response to long-range missiles for Ukraine. That is terrifying.
Russia is the country that could stop this. Russia could withdraw now. Russia could stop killing Ukrainians. Russia could stop bringing war to the continent of Europe. And Russia has chosen not to do it. That's what this boils down to. In the chessboard of the war in Ukraine, a pawn has become a queen as Joe Biden says he'll let the country use American long-range missiles on targets inside Russia. Let's hear the view from Moscow and talk to Sergei Markov, Russian political scientist, former advisor to Vladimir Putin. Good morning to you.
I don't know. You really believe this morning is good? I think it's very bad, because little France, Britain, and United States made very big step, even jump to the nuclear war and catastrophic destroying all human mind. All of yours will be killed probably end of this year, and your families will be killed and so on. And it's
hang on. So are you saying that the Ukraine? Hang on. So I just want to be clear, Sergei, what you're saying there. The decision by Biden to authorize long-range weapons for Ukraine will lead to nuclear war.
Yes, exactly.
What Putin's going to press the button.
You know, the button. Look at the history of the World War I. Nobody wanted the war, but war happened. It what became the absolutely catastrophe. That's exactly what could happen now. Nobody, of course, wants to have a nuclear war. But if you go the escalation steps, this escalation of the will move you to this direction. You know, it's very easily. These rocket missiles, they will be used not Ukrainian soldiers and officers, because technically they cannot do it. These rocket missiles will be fully managed by officers, military officers of the American Army, British Army, and French Army.
So you're saying that you believe that soldiers from France, the UK, and the US will be firing on Russian targets in Russia. That is simply not the case, though, is it? There is no evidence whatsoever of American, British soldiers actually engaged in direct warfare. That hasn't happened.
You know, it's exactly what will be happen, because technically, to target these rocket missiles, you need to have a satellite group and a very good map of the Russian territory. Such map has only American Army. By the way, even British and French Army has not. And to target those rocket missiles should be satellite group. Ukrainian army has no satellite group. So what kind of satellite group will be used for the target on these rocket missiles? What? Can you say the answer? Only answer: American, British, and French.
So, do you think Putin will?
Yeah, I mean, even everything that's happened so far to date with just troops that are helping Russia from other countries. You have North Korea, which isn't a very active military in terms of anything outside of North Korean borders. So that's a huge step. Also, China and other countries that are part of BRICS have been kind of there helping Russia the way that NATO has been helping Ukraine, even though NATO or Ukraine is not a part of NATO. It's just scary times. And these videos aren't put out to make anyone experience a tremendous amount of anxiety or any anxiety at all. Although those are certainly effects that I feel, at least that I think I feel from consuming this type of news. It's not to add more fear mongering. It's just to deliver you the absolute truth of what the heck is actually going on, because it is extremely scary. And if you're choosing to live your life and block out this type of information, then that's fine. But I am choosing to, watch the news and consume the news and then make videos about the news, sharing the news for you viewers. And that's the end of the video, fortunately. I don't think there's any more bad news, at least not yet. But make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn post notifications on so you can stay up to date on all things that are happening, especially here in Canada or Canada's involvement. And if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to drop a like on the video and comment down below about any of the topics that were covered. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.